Before we talk about sanding, stripping, or redemption, let's take a moment to admire what I started with. These bedside tables were free, which, in the world of DIY, usually means somebody else gave up first. They weren't just painted black, they were entombed in it, thick, sticky, the kind of black that doesn't reflect light so much as consume it. It's as if the devil himself had a weekend off and decided to redecorate. Or maybe someone just had a bucket full of regret and thought, why not share it with the furniture? Every surface feels like it's plotting against you. The paint thus just doesn't sit on the wood. It clings to it, like it knows what's coming. And as I walk around these tables, I can't help but think, this isn't restoration. This is an exorcism. Now that we've established that these bedside tables were painted by someone with a bucket full of regret, it's time to take them apart, piece by piece, and see what we're really dealing with. Every restoration starts with a bit of detective work. So I'm labelling each drawer, marking where it belongs, and unscrewing every handle and rail. It's not glamorous, but it's the difference between chaos and craftsmanship. The tools of the trade today? Well, a hammer for persuasion, a drill for precision, and a screwdriver for everything in between. Each one gets its moment of glory or frustration, depending on how cooperative the furniture decides to be. As I dismantle, I'm inspecting every joint, every crack, every questionable decision made by whoever last touched these bedside tables. This is where the plan starts to form. How far I'll need to go, what can be saved, and what needs divine intervention. Everything gets brushed down, cleaned up, and prepped for the real battle ahead. And just before we wrap up this stage, I'll do a quick test sand, a little peek beneath the darkness. The result? Promising, but not easy. The black paint doesn't surrender, it fights. It clogs the sandpaper, laughs at the effort, and reminds me that this project isn't going to be a gentle stroll through the Hamptons. Some of the footage is sped up, for sure, not because I'm fast, but because watching me unscrew a million different rails in real time would make even the devil himself beg for mercy. But this is the groundwork, the calm before the chaos, the moment where the cursed furniture starts to reveal its secrets, and I start plotting its redemption. With the bedside tables dismantled and the full horror of the black paint revealed, it was time to face the next challenge, sanding the drawer fronts. These were the parts that people actually touch, the bits that get opened, closed, slammed, and occasionally kicked when someone stubs a toe at 3 a.m. If anything deserved the proper finish, it was these. Now I could have sanded them by hand, I could have used an orbital sander like a normal, responsible adult. But no, I had a better idea. I had a drum sander. And not just any drum sander. This magnificent contraption came from a deceased estate, a home-built unit assembled from equal parts of ingenuity and mild disregard for personal safety. I'm fairly certain the electric motor once belonged to a washing machine. It hums with the same energy as the spin cycle that's about to throw itself across the laundry. But I figured, why not? Let's see if we can get this thing without losing an eye, or sand it off one's fingers. And before anybody points it out, yes, I'm aware of the lack of hearing and eye protection. This is my contribution to Safety Awareness Week, a public demonstration of what not to do. The theory was simple. The drum sander would keep everything perfectly flat, perfectly even, and make light work of the paint. The reality? The paint, also known as the black void, had other plans. It clogged the sandpaper like wet tar. It gummed up the drum. It fought back with enthusiasm of a toddler refusing vegetables. I made multiple trips to the big box store for more sandpaper, each time pretending I knew exactly what I was doing. Eventually, I abandoned the finesse entirely and relied on brute force. At one point, I'm pretty sure I smelt smoke. It could have been the paint. It could have been the motor. It could have been my dignity burning away. Hard to say. But we pushed through. Slowly, painfully, the drawer fronts began to reveal themselves. The wood grain emerged from beneath the darkness like a long-lost treasure. And for the first time in this entire project, I felt a flicker of hope. The kind of hope that you get when you realise that the cursed furniture might actually have a future that doesn't involve fire. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't quick. But we got through it. The drawer fronts, they were finally ready for the redemption arc. With the drawer fronts finally wrestled free from the black void using the drum sander, with all my fingers still intact, it was time to tackle the parts the machine couldn't reach. The beveled edges. These delicate little curves are the places your hands actually touch. The places that give the furniture its shape, its character, and unfortunately for me, the places where the drum sander would happily chew straight through it given half the chance. So this is where the hand sanding comes in. It's slow, methodical, soul-testing kind. The kind that makes you question why you just didn't buy new furniture in the first place. Hand sanding is honest work. It's just you, the wood, and the creeping suspicion that you're going to be here for a while. Every stroke reveals a little more of the grain, a little more of the story hidden beneath that cursed paint. And every now and then you get a reminder of just how thick the paint really was, like scraping barnacles off the shipwreck. There's no shortcut here, no machine to blame when things go wrong, just patience, persistence, and a growing pile of dust that looks like it came straight out of a chimney sweep. But slowly, painfully slowly, the edges start to clean up, the curves sharpen, the wood begins to breathe again. And for the first time you can actually see what these bedside tables are meant to look like before someone dipped them into despair. It's not glamorous, it's not fast, but it's the kind of work that makes the final result worth it. And by the end of it, my hands numb, my sanity slightly eroded, the bevels were finally ready, the darkness was fading, the redemption was beginning to take shape. Now I'd love to stand here and tell you that every inch of sanding from this point on was done by hand, that I powered through like some sort of woodworking monk, armed with nothing but sandpaper, determination, and a playlist of questionable 80s hits. But that would be a slight misrepresentation of the truth. Because when the moment called for it, when the paint dug in its heels and refused to budge, I brought in a big gun, the trusty Ryobi random orbital sander. With a fresh sheet of sandpaper, this thing turned what would have been hours of slow, meditative suffering into something approaching efficiency. It buzzed through the black paint like it had a personal grudge against it. And honestly, I don't blame it. Now, the unit does have a filter, a small, polite, optimistic filter that tries its best to catch the dust. But let's be honest, my nose did most of the heavy lifting. I didn't realise just how much until later that day, standing in the shower, watching what looked like chimney soot swirl down the drain. A gentle reminder that perhaps, just perhaps, I should have worn a mask. But with the orbital sander in play, the job moved quickly. The surfaces smoothed out, the last of the cursed black paint surrendered, and the wood finally started to look like something worth saving. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't textbook, but it was effective. And sometimes in the world of DIY, that's all you need. The right tool, a bit of stubbornness, and a nose willing to be sacrificed for the cause. Alright, so I may have lied. The Ryobi wasn't the big gun, not even close. Because as stubborn as that black paint was, it still had one more trick up its sleeve, mocking me. Every pass of the sander felt like it was laughing, whispering, "Is that all you've got?" and I wasn't about to be outdone by a bedside table. So I brought in a real weapon, a twisted wire cup wheel. Spinning at 3,000 revolutions per minute on the angle grinder, this thing doesn't negotiate. It doesn't compromise. It simply removes whatever's in front of it. Paint, varnish, dignity, small sections of timber if you're not careful. And when this beast hits the surface, the paint just doesn't resist. It evaporates. It's like watching years of bad decisions get erased in real time. But make no mistake, this tool does not discriminate. It will happily gouge out a chunk of wood the moment you lose focus. Blink at the wrong time and suddenly you've carved a deep trench, deep enough to plant potatoes. So every pass had to be controlled, firm, steady, and with the kind of concentration normally reserved for a bomb disposal technician. The noise was incredible. The vibration travelled up my arms like I was trying to wrestle a jackhammer. And the shower of debris and dust made this whole thing feel like a low-budget action movie. But you know what? It worked. The cursed paint finally surrendered. The blackness peeled away, revealing the wood beneath, scarred, tired, but still standing. And for the first time in this entire restoration, I felt like I was winning. Not because I'm particularly skilled, not because I had a plan, but because sometimes the only way to deal with a problem is to hit it with something spinning at 3,000 RPM. Please note that there is a lot going on the screen at the moment. By this point of the restoration, we'd spent a considerable amount of time trying to work out what actually worked and what absolutely didn't. We learned how the paint behaved, badly, and how resilient the timber was, surprisingly. Every tool we'd thrown at it revealed a little bit more of the story. The drum sander showed us the stubbornness, the orbital sander showed us the thickness, and the wire wheel showed us just how far we were willing to go to win. Now it was time to tackle the carcass. And really, this part is just a rinse and repeat of everything we've done in the drawers. A combination of hand sanding, mechanical sanding, a bit of destruction, a delicate touch of finishing passes. It was like an emotional roller coaster. One moment you're feeling triumphant, the next you're wondering why you just didn't take up knitting instead. But what would a Ricardo's DIY video be without a twist? Well, let's introduce the scraper. The scraper is a beautifully simple, slightly terrifying tool. A sharp 90-degree tungsten blade that doesn't negotiate. Unlike sanding or grinding, where abrasive forces slowly convince the material to yield, the scraper digs in, rips into the work, like you're tearing off a band-aid from a wound that you're not entirely sure has healed. Angle it incorrectly, and you create a brand new texture that you never asked for. Keep it flat, and it strips away paint cleanly, efficiently, and with a satisfying hiss that makes you feel like you're actually in control of your life for a moment. And while we have stabby tools in play, I brought in a chisel. Not for carving, not for shaping, but for the finer scrapings, the little corners, the edges where the scraper just couldn't quite reach. With a bit of finesse, the chisel became a precision instrument in this orchestra of chaos. The process was slow, messy, occasionally painful, but effective. Every pass of the scraper revealed more timber. Every stroke of the chisel cleaned up another stubborn corner. Every round of sanding, and there were many, smoothed out the scars left behind by the little battle with the black void. And then, almost suddenly, the carcass started to look good. Not just better than before, but better than new. The paint was gone, the timber was clean, the surfaces were smooth, and for the first time since dragging these cursed bedside tables home, I could actually see the Hamptons Chic furniture that we were destined for. It took patience, it took stubbornness, it took more tools than I care to admit. But the darkness was finally gone, and the redemption was well underway. With the bulk of the hard work behind us, the scraping, the grinding, the sanding, The moments of dread. It was finally time to shift gears. We'd beaten the cursed paint. We'd survived the drum sander, the orbital sander, the wire wheel of doom, and the emotional rollercoaster that came with all of it. Now we're standing at the threshold of the part that actually matters, smoothing out the front panels. These fronts are the face of the cabinet, the first thing people see, the first thing they touch, the part that tells the world whether you've restored a piece of furniture or just bullied it into submission. And to get it right, the preparation has to be meticulous. So we begin with fine sanding, and then, because the project has taught me nothing but humility, we follow that with even finer sanding. The goal here is simple: erase the scars of everything that came before. The scratch marks from the scraper, the swirls from the orbital, the faint bruising left behind by the wire wheel. All of it needs to blend into a surface so smooth it feels like it's never known hardship. This is the part of the process where patience becomes a tool. You're not fighting the wood anymore. You're coaxing it, encouraging it, bringing out the grain, the warmth, the character that has been hiding under layers of this bare black paint. Every pass of the sandpaper softens the story. Every stroke brings the timber closer to the finish line, and slowly the fronts begin to transform, from rough and scarred to clean, crisp, and ready for the Hamptons debut. It's repetitive, it's slow, it's the kind of work that gives you far too much time to think about your life choices. But it's also the moment when the project stops becoming a battle and starts becoming something beautiful. By the time the final sanding is done, the surface feels refined, consistent, and ready for whatever comes next. Stained varnish paint, or a moment of quiet admiration. And standing there, brushing off the last of the dust, you realise something. These fronts aren't just restored, they're redeemed. Now, while all the glamorous sanding and scraping was happening, there was one part of the project quietly waiting in the shadows. The rails. Typically forgotten, unseen and unloved, these little metal workhorses never get the attention they deserved. But the OCD part of me simply couldn't ignore them. Even though no one would really ever see them, I knew they needed a quick makeover. Nothing dramatic, just a spray, a wipe and a moment of dignity. At the very least, I needed to make sure that they stayed functional, because there's nothing worse than a beautifully restored drawer that refuses to open. So the rails got their moment. A little care, a little cleaning, and suddenly they were sliding like they remembered what their job was. It's the small things that make the whole piece feel complete. We're starting to reach the crescendo now, the point in every Ricardo's DIY project where the chaos settles, the dust clears, and the real transformation begins. Painting is the penultimate surface preparation task for these bedside tables. The moment where all the sanding, scraping, grinding, and emotional turbulence finally pays off. But before a single drop of paint touches the timber, there's one last ritual to perform: the masking. Masking is the unsung hero of any good restoration. It's the quiet guardian that keeps the clean bits clean and the messy bits messy. So I carefully tape off every edge, every corner, every surface that needed to remain pristine. Because nothing ruins a Hamptons Chic finish faster than a rogue splash of paint where it doesn't belong. Now, although you'll only see one coat in this video, let me be perfectly honest. One coat of paint was never going to cut it. Not after what these tables have been through. Not after that cursed paint, the wire wheel and the drum sander. In reality, I brushed on 5 coats. 5. Each one laid down with the patience of a monk and the determination of someone who refuses to let a piece of furniture win. The first coat soaked in like the timber was dehydrated. The second one started to build. By the third, things started looking promising. By the fourth, I could really see the finish taking shape. And the fifth, well, that was the victory lap. With every coat, the transformation became cleaner. The darkness was gone. The surfaces brightened. The whole piece started to feel lighter, cleaner, and ready for a new life. Freshly prepared timber looks clean, but it also looks sterile. There's a point where it stops feeling like furniture and starts looking like something that's just rolled off the assembly line. And freshly sanded pine, well, pine is a perfectly respectable timber. It's versatile, cost effective, easy to work with. But let's be honest, in its raw state it doesn't really whisper heirloom. It whispers budget renovation or temporary student housing. We're not trying to turn a sow's ear into a silk purse here. And we're certainly not trying to elevate these bedside tables into high-end New York furniture apartment jewellery. But at the same time, we don't want them looking like they've just been wheeled into a hospital ward. The timber needs warmth, depth, a bit of life. So, gloves on, dabber in hand, dip into the sea, the stain and apply. This is where the transformation really begins. The moment the stain touches the pine, everything changes. The grain wakens up, the colour deepens. The timber stops looking cheap and starts looking intentional. Full, even coverage is the goal. No streaks, no missed patches, no half-hearted dabs. Just smooth, confident strokes that bring out the character hidden beneath all of that sanding. With each pass, the wood shifts from pale and lifeless to warm and inviting. The knots stand out, the lines sharpen. The whole surface takes on a richness that simply didn't exist before. It's a simple process, but it is transformative. And as the cedar stain settles in, you can finally see the balance we've been chasing. Not luxury, not extravagance, but honest, beautiful timber that feels like it belongs in a home, not in a warehouse. The rawness is gone, the warmth is back. And these bedside tables are finally starting to look like the Hamptons inspired pieces that they were always meant to be. You always know you're getting close to the finish line when the rails go back into the carcass and the drawers. These pieces are usually forgotten, hidden away and taken completely for granted. But without them, nothing slides, nothing aligns, nothing works. Getting the rails screwed back in marks the true end of the restoration phase. Everything up to this point has been preparation, chaos, sanding, scraping and survival. Now we're officially moving into assembly, the moment where all the pieces finally come together before the final polish. The structure is back, the function is restored, and the transformation is nearly complete. With the sanding done and the timber looking the best it has for decades, it's time for the final touch. Protection. And for that, I'm bringing out a combination that never fails me. Teak oil and my own homemade furniture wax. Teak oil gives the timber that deep, rich penetration it needs to stay nourished and resilient, soaking right into the grain like it's been waiting for this moment its whole life. The wax follows up with a smooth, protective finish that seals everything in and gives the surface that subtle, classy sheen. It's a simple pairing, but together they elevate the timber from freshly sanded to properly finished. Strength on the inside, polish on the outside, the perfect way to wrap up the restoration before the final assembly. It's getting exciting now. The drawer fronts are being attached and the handles are finally being screwed in. These handles were the only part of the entire project that didn't need any restoration at all, but seeing them go back in is a real milestone. It's the moment when the drawers stop being loose pieces of wood and start looking like finished furniture again. With the fronts aligned and the handles secured, we're officially stepping into the final stages of assembly. The transformation is almost complete. This is it, the final assembly. After all the sanding, scraping, staining, painting, and the occasional emotional breakdown, the moment of truth has finally arrived. The drawers slide in with that smooth, confident motion that tells you that everything is aligned, everything is square, and everything is finally working together instead of fighting back. One by one, each drawer finds its home. The gaps are even, the fronts line up, and the whole piece suddenly looks less like a project and more like a piece of furniture again. Standing back, you can see the transformation in full. What once looked like it had been rescued from the depths of a storage unit is now ready for its close-ups. Photos, videos, the whole glamorous treatment. And then, at long last, it's time to take these babies back into the bedroom, where they can once again become useful contributors to the household. Restored, revived, and ready for duty. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, then thank you. Please like, share and subscribe. Comments are always welcome.